Welcome back to my channel, and as always, thanks to my subscribers. In this video, I'd like to show you my layout as it exists today. Along the way, I'll show you some progress photos of the layout so you can see how my vision has evolved, and also see some of my construction methods. This is my 7th layout, spanning almost 60 years in the hobby. I had originally planned a much more grandiose layout, loosely modeling the Rio Grande from La Veta Pass through Creede, Colorado, as it travels through the San Luis Valley in south-central Colorado. I wanted to model the western slope of La Veta Pass, including the towns of La Veta, Alamosa, Del Norte, and Creede. I planned staging, which would connect the western end of the layout to the eastern end, allowing continuous running. Sadly, this proved too ambitious. Our retirement home does not have the space for such a large layout, and perhaps that's a good thing. I've found my much smaller layout to be quite challenging enough. I started in 2018 with the town of Del Norte, Colorado, on an 8-foot by 2-foot table, with 2 extensions for staging, as seen here. This photo was taken about 30 days into construction. We are panning from the west staging through the town of Del Norte, and finishing at the east staging. 2.5 years later, I had roughed in the town of Del Norte and made a start on scenery. As you can see in this photo, many of my structures are incomplete, and the ballasting is incomplete. The hill at the east end of Del Norte is mostly finished, but the south side of the railroad cut at the east end of town is still missing. In the summer of 2021, the Railroad Commission, and you married men know who that is, approved plans for this expansion. I added the town of Creede, Colorado on the back side of the original layout and replaced the staging extensions with curved track joining the 2 sides of the layout. I could now operate in continuous mode, or I could use one side of the layout to provide staging for the other side. With that short bit of history, let's take a ride in a locomotive cab as it rolls around my layout. In the past 5 years, I've learned quite a few tricks about how to make a small layout seem larger. One of those tricks is to find ways to divide your layout into scenes. This hill at the east end of Del Norte is the first of 3 scene dividers on my layout. I imagined the railroad right-of-way cutting through an outcropping of Mancos Shale, which is found all over southwestern Colorado. Notice that I have modeled the shale beds rising to the west. This not only adds visual interest, but it allowed me to add some rock outcroppings on the west face of the hill. As we pass through the rock cut, we clear the first siding switch at the east end of Del Norte. This siding is used to stack eastbound freight for pickup, and it is long enough to hold 8 cars. This brings me to my second tip for making a small layout seem larger. Keep your rolling stock short. The longest freight car on my layout is the 42-foot flat car you saw me build in my recent video. Setting my layout in the late 1950s allows me to avoid the need for long freight cars. Now we are approaching the switch for the west siding in Del Norte. This siding handles all incoming freight, and it is used to stack westbound freight for pickup. It is long enough to hold 5 cars, and it is a very busy spot during operating sessions. As we approach the Main Street grade crossing in Del Norte, you can see the now unused Del Norte Water Tower. The last steam locomotive left DNR-GW service almost 2 years ago. Notice the dwarf signal at the west end of the west siding. The red signal indicates that the switches are not aligned to allow traffic from the siding to move on to the main line. On the left side of the main, we pass first the maintenance shed, where crews store equipment and tools for track repair, and second, the Del Norte station, where passengers are waiting for the eastbound train to Alamosa. As we glide through the west siding switch, we notice that the block signal has a green over yellow aspect. This means approach slow on my layout. We are now entering the layout extension I added in 2021. We are curving around a low hill that serves as the second scene divider on my layout. The hill was built up in layers of foam and covered with rock castings and sculptamold. Scenery so far consists of ground foam of various colors and textures, and some pine trees. The rocky geology of the hill explains the need for a short tunnel, which emphasizes the scene division between Del Norte and Creed. I wanted the tunnel to be short enough to allow the viewer to see through, so I added rock texture to the tunnel walls. Obviously, I never imagined anyone would ever see the roof of the tunnel. Emerging from the tunnel, we approach the town of Creed. This town is still very much in the planning phase. I am still building the structures that will make up the town, and I'm constantly shuffling them around to find an arrangement that I like. You have seen several of these structures in my videos. Creed has a single passing siding, which holds both eastbound and westbound freight. The siding is long enough to hold 5 cars, which brings me to my third trick. Keep your trains short. A small HO scale layout is the worst possible place for long trains. In my case, a string of, say, 40 cars would stretch 3/4 of the way around my layout. Needless to say, this is a great way to make your layout look small. As we pass through the town of Creed, notice how many of my buildings have lights. Most of those that are not lit are either unplugged from power or they are unfinished. I am a firm believer in adding lights to structures as a way to increase interest. The wires and connectors you see on the table to the right are how I connect my structures to DC power. As we pass through the west siding switch in Creed, we approach the mine spur. This is a short spur up a blind canyon which serves a single ore dump. The ore dump is the Silverton ore dump by Banta Model Works, and it handles the ore from a very small mine complex just around the curve up ahead. On the left, we see the block signal is displaying the approach slow aspect, so it is safe to proceed. We are now approaching what will become my third scene divider, another right-of-way rock cut. This will mark the transition to the mine scene, which is under construction at this end of the layout. The mine complex will be a mix of kit buildings, kit-bashed buildings, and scratch-built buildings, and will serve as the reason for ore traffic from Creed to Alamosa. As we round the curve along the future mining scene, you can see in the inset the construction methods I use. Layers of foam insulation shaped to the general landform and covered with Sculptamold. I glue rock castings to the foam before applying Sculptamold. I cast and paint almost all of my own rocks. That makes it a lot easier to take a razor saw to a casting to make it fit. I can always cast and paint a replacement. And now as we approach the rock cut at the east end of Del Norte, it's time to discuss my fourth trick for making your layout seem larger. Keep your train speeds low. It has taken us almost 6 minutes to make a complete circuit of my layout. This contributes to the illusion that the layout is larger than it really is. Our tour is almost complete as the train approaches and stops at the Del Norte station. Notice the photos in the video inset. They illustrate my fifth and final trick for making your layout seem larger. That is, include details. Lots of details. These details will engage your viewer's interest and draw them into the scene. Your details do not need to be obvious. In fact, a detail that the viewer has to search for will encourage further searching and at closer viewing distances. The closer the viewer is to your layout, the larger it will seem. The evidence of this is in the video clip you're watching right now. By placing the camera at the position of an HO scale engineer, you see the layout from an entirely different perspective. This need for detail underscores the importance of lighting. An illuminated interior with even a modest amount of detail will serve as something your viewer will discover. I've had viewers point out to me the details they notice, as though I had not created those very details myself. The key to creating interesting details is the use of figures. Figures convey not only a sense of activity in the scene, they serve as a benchmark of scale. They help the viewer become comfortable with moving closer. I have a running to-do list posted above my workbench. Number 1 on that list is figures, figures, figures. And number 2 is details, details, details. Hidden behind the Del Norte Seed and Feed store is this welder's shop. By combining a simple figure, a kneeling welder from Woodland Scenics, and some simple light effects controlled by an Arduino, I have created a scene that will keep visitors staring for several minutes. They first notice the lighting, then they notice the silhouetted welder's figure. Then they notice the shelves at the back of the scene, which are only illuminated by the welder's torch. When they notice that sometimes the lights simulate an arc welder, and other times they simulate either a grinding or a cutting torch, they continue watching and waiting for the pattern to repeat. It doesn't. Another detail that captures viewers' interest is this grade crossing flasher. There are a number of flasher control circuits available. My problem with the commercial circuits is that they all use digital logic. All lights flash on and off in perfect sync. But before about 1980, these flashers were controlled by electromechanical relays, and those relays did not perform with digital precision. So I've programmed my flashers to operate just out of sync with each other. They start and stop at different times, and they flash at subtly different rates. But the realism can be improved even more by adding sound. I built this sound system myself for a total cost of about $25. The addition of sound greatly improves the interest of this scene. As always, I would love to hear your comments and questions. If you want to see more videos of this type, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.